Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind Movement Health podcast. I'm super excited today. We've got a special guest on the show. Karina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here and excited to talk about women's health today.
Well, I'm excited too because, as I said when I reached out to you, I've been following you on Substack for quite a while, and all your information that you share is amazing, really well researched. So, I really wanted you to come on to the podcast because we really focus on women's health here on the podcast, all aspects of health from movement to mental health to, nutrition. And you're an expert in nutrition. So, before we dive in, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Karina. I'm originally from Romania, but moved to Spain 3 years ago with my husband and my almost 5-year-old daughter. I'm a certified functional nutrition counselor. And in my practice back to Wholesome, like you said, I work with mostly with women. And I help them, support them in dealing with hormonal imbalances, with metabolic challenges, with fatigue, mood swings, and really help them get into balance and get to optimal health from a root cause perspective, like digging deeper, seeing what's going on, and helping them from there.
And I think that root cause, that's the really
Hmm.
sort of the key to it, because
Yeah.
so many of us, especially, if we go to the doctor and we say, oh, I'm feeling a little bit tired, or, they'll say, oh, well, that's probably just normal. You're busy, it's life, and
Yeah.
often gloss over it. But if we can get to the root cause and the understanding, as I'm sure you find in your practice, you uncover so much more.
Yeah, and it's kind of how my journey started with going to the doctor's office and getting that response that everything is fine and like, yeah, your labs are kind of off, but let's check again in 6 months and see where we're at without any like action plan or what to do. And yeah, so that's when I was like, okay, I need a different plan. I need to look at things differently.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of women sort of listening in that have had that sort of same experience when they go to the doctor. But then, they do come home and they go, well, where do I start? What do I do?
Yeah.
So, what do you suggest that if there are people listening in that are like, yeah, I've had that, that's me, but I'm not sure where to
Mhm.
start or what to uncover, what do you suggest?
Well, first of all, I think it's like getting curious, but like not from a place of shame or blaming yourself that you're feeling this way, just getting curious from a place of curiosity and compassion and looking at your symptoms and knowing that all these symptoms that you're having is your body communicating with you and telling you that something needs attention. So instead of shoving them under the rug, just looking at them and see what they might be telling you. And for me, when I started learning and diving deep into functional nutrition, it was empowering, like trying to put the pieces together and understanding everything and how everything works and seeing that, okay, there's so much that we can do. But it was also overwhelming because there was a lot of information and I was like, okay, what do I do with it now? So I think it's also important after you take a look at your symptoms and see that something is going on to go and work with somebody, at least in the beginning to help you kind of give you the blueprint. And then, of course, you're in the driver's seat. So you're going to have to do all the changes. And that's something I tell my clients all the time, like, okay, I can be on the right side. I can be next to you. I can tell you where to drive and what to do. I'm holding the map, but you're the one driving. So, which at the end of the day, it's kind of cool that you get to be your own, you get to be such an important player in your health journey.
Yeah, well, you're your own advocate. Do you know what I mean? If you aren't
Yeah.
advocating for yourself, it's very rare that someone's going to be there advocating for you as strongly as you would do it for yourself. And as you said, that's
Yeah.
when I think we often listen to other people, what's the best thing for us, but we need to listen to our bodies ourselves and really stand up for ourselves and say, hey, no, I think this is what's going to be the best thing when you've gotten that advice that you're working with somebody that you trust.
Yeah. And also, I think it's like when you go to a conventional doctor, it's usually that idea that, okay, you're the patient, I'm the doctor, I know better. I'm going to tell you what's going on. I'm going to tell you what's happening in your body. But at the end of the day, you're the one living in your body and you should know it best. So you should definitely have a saying in that.
Mm. And I know from your work that you're a big advocate for fiber and for people to think about fiber when it comes to their
Yeah.
diet. So, can you share with our listeners, what your views on are fiber, like generally how much we should be aiming and why it's so good for us and why we should be sort of bumping it up in our diet?
Yeah. So yeah, you're right about that. I love talking about fiber. So fiber is really cool because so it's not technically a macronutrient. It's part of complex carbohydrates. And the interesting thing is that our body doesn't have the enzymes to digest it. So fiber usually passes through our digestive system almost intact, but in its way, it does a lot of good. So it can help us support stable blood sugar. It can help us with gut health by feeding beneficial bacteria because it's fermented in the gut, so it becomes food for our good bacteria. It helps with liver detoxification, which is something that a lot of my clients struggle with, and that's where fiber comes in, and it's really beneficial. It helps with bowel movements and digestion running smoothly. It supports heart health by decreasing LDL levels, reduces inflammation, helps with nutrient absorption. So it's really this wonderful
Wonder.
thing that, yeah. And the thing is that with our modern diet, we tend to eat most of our food is over processed, and it's basically made out of simple carbs, which are stripped from their fiber and minerals and vitamins and everything. Um, so our fiber intake is really low with the modern diet. So it really depends. So my roughly estimate would be somewhere around 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day, but it really depends from person to person. And that's where functional nutrition comes in because it's very personalized and we look at the person and see what their actual needs are. And it's also like when you get started with fiber, in the beginning, it's possible that you're not going to feel that great. So that's why it's important to start really low and move slowly. Also boost hydration while you start it. It's also like we have two types of fiber. There's soluble fiber and there's insoluble fiber. So soluble fiber is the one that dissolves in water and forms this like gel-like consistency. And it's really good because it has this adaptogenic effect in our body. Like whether you're constipated or you have diarrhea, it will help you by bulking the stool and help with transit. And you can find it in flax seeds, in chia seeds, in apples, in beans, lentils, in psyllium husk. So usually I have my clients start with soluble fiber because it's much well tolerated. And then there's also insoluble fiber, which is the one that gives the crunch to fruit and vegetables and that gives them the structure. And this one you find it in nuts, in seeds, in most of the vegetables. And it's also useful and helpful because it bulks the stool and it helps with bowel movement, supporting regularity.
Mm. So
So yeah,
lots of people struggle with constipation or maybe on the other end with diarrhea and stuff too.
yeah,
Inflammation is definitely a big one that even people don't maybe realize they've got a lot of inflammation, but they do. And again, fiber can help with that. And then, as you said, just the overall gut health, which is one of those things that no one used to ever think about, but now we know how important it is. And if it's as simple, to help it just by increasing your fiber intake, then, it's not a really hard thing to do to add in some seeds or some veggies or some
mm-hmm.
beans. But like you said, just at a slow building interval, don't go too hard, too fast.
Yeah, exactly. And some of my favorite ways are like I mentioned chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp seeds also. So I like to do like mix 2 tablespoons of each with yogurt or kefir or like plant milk, and add some berries, add some nut butter, and there you go. You have a very nutrition and high fiber snack. Another thing that I did was replace all the white and all-purpose flour with almond flour or coconut flour, which are super high in fiber and much more nutritious than regular flour. Also, like eating fruit and veggies with the peel on, it's a good idea to increase your fiber. But I would recommend buying organic in this case, because otherwise you're also going to ingest a lot of pesticides, which we don't want. Uh, and it can be something simple, like you said, adding nuts and seeds on top of your salads in your smoothies, starting your meal with a small bowl of salad. So it's really not that complicated, but when you're not used to focusing on fiber, it takes a little bit of getting used to and building it into a habit.
Yeah. And I think too, like when I swapped a lot of my stuff across, like I'll make my own muesli bars so that I can put all different nuts and
Mhm.
seeds in and I'll bind it with like dates and almond butter. And you can make a really nice muesli bar that's got no additives, no preservatives. It's not too high in sugar and it's got tons of fiber. So if you can, organize or even do a little bit of meal prep, sort of set some time aside and experiment,
Mhm.
like you might find one recipe that's great and you might try another one that's not so great, but you can always try to sort of mold it to suit you as well.
Yeah, and I think like this food prep is great because it gives you like you can, for example, like you do the protein bars. I do granola, nuts and seeds granola, and I bake like 2 jars of it, and then I have for the whole week, and I know I have there are like 5, 7 different plants, so it's really high in fiber, low in sugar, like you said, much better than the one that you would buy from the store.
And I know generally they sort of say to aim for 30 different plant-based foods
Mm-hmm.
per week. And if someone's kind of listening in and going, oh my goodness, I probably only have about seven. And I
Yeah.
don't know how I would get to 30. Can you give some, suggestions about, where they should mainly start and what they should aim for and over sort of how
Mm-hmm.
long should they aim to build up to those 30?
Yeah. So I think the first thing you could do is like actually get curious. And when you go to the supermarket or to the farmer's market or wherever you go, just get curious to see what other fruit and veggies there are besides the one that you usually buy. And buy a new one every week and try it out and see if you like it. If you like it, then keep it in your diet. If not, then try something else. Also, another great hack that I actually use is like when you buy, so for example, when you buy apples, instead of buying 1 kilo of the same apples, buy 2, 3 apples from different types because each of them counts as different plant points. The same goes with onions, with potatoes, with bell peppers. Instead of only buying red ones, you can buy yellow, green, and red. So that's really useful. I also keep like all my veggies scraps, the peels and everything. I keep them in the freezer, and once a week or once every 2 weeks, I put everything in the instant pot and do a bone broth. So it also helps with adding those plant points. Also using herbs and spices, which is I think so underused and so easy to do. Just play with them and see what you like, but they also count as plant points. And once you start doing this, you realize that okay, it's much easier to add and to get to that 30 in a week. It's not so hard.
Mm. And usually, like you said, if you lean into some, just even the herbs and spices, often your food will taste even better. And
Yeah,
it's the parsley you've added in, or the little bit of chili or whatever. It all still counts as adding a different food in.
yeah, yeah. You're right.
Now, when it comes to women's health, as women sort of start to hit menopause or perimenopause and then menopause, there's often a lot of fluctuations with hormones, and many of us struggle with, different symptoms. Sometimes it's like some excess weight, inflammation, sleepless nights, it kind of feels like you name it and we can go through it. Where do women start when they sort of are hitting that sort of perimenopause stage and they want to really focus on, maybe looking after themselves a little bit better because life's been busy and they've had these sort of changes happen and they're like, yep, okay, I'm going to start sort of prioritizing my health a bit more. Where do you suggest that they may start?
Yeah. So first of all, understanding that these symptoms are super common, but that doesn't make them normal, and you can have a smooth transition through perimenopause and menopause. And yeah, it's really a time when you have to start to get more careful. I would say before that, but like if you haven't done it before, do it now. Being more careful with your nutrition, movement, stress management, sleep, everything, because it all counts. And in terms of nutrition, I think I would focus more on having balanced meals, having balanced blood sugar, because really blood sugar is at the foundation of your hormonal pyramid. And you cannot have balanced hormones if you don't have a balanced blood sugar. So I will start by building your plate around protein, healthy fats, and fiber. Probably increasing the protein amount as we age because we also start losing muscle. Um, Also, finding movement that you enjoy, and it can simply be as going for a walk every day or weightlifting. That's super helpful again as we age. Yeah, learning how to manage stress is a big one. Also, sleep is important because that's when our hormones get regulated and our body repairs itself. So it's also a fundamental piece of the puzzle. So it also impacts blood sugar balance. So you can eat the same meals, but if they come after a night of poor sleep, you're going to have a completely different response in terms of blood sugar compared to the same food after a night of really good quality sleep.
Mm. And I think
So, you know,
that's
it's a big
quite
one.
surprising to hear. Do you know what I mean? You often just think, well, what you eat's going to just, if a lolly spikes your blood sugar, it shouldn't matter how much sleep you've had. So I think that's a really good point to make that it's not just about the nutrition you eat, it can be about
Yeah.
timing and it can be about the stress and the sleep too, because they can all influence your blood sugar as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can eat the most nutrient dense diet, but still struggle with blood sugar balance. If you're always in fight or flight, if you don't sit down for a meal and you're always go, 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 and you're always stressed, if your sleep is poor, if you lack movement, it's so many other things, not just the food.
Mm. And I want to touch on protein because I feel like protein's kind of having a moment right now. Hopefully, fiber is too. But I feel like, on a lot of the social media and stuff, there's lots of people coming on saying you really need to, increase your protein, bump up your protein. But when it comes to protein, how much protein a day do you generally recommend that women should be starting to sort of look at?
Yeah. So with protein, I have mixed feelings. Part of me is really glad that protein is having its moment now, especially after years of promoting vegan and vegetarian diets, which I was kind of a part of. And I was like, well, I had my years of being a vegetarian, but then I realized that for my body, it was not doing me good. So yeah, protein plays a key role in a lot of areas. It helps your brain, it helps your blood sugar regulation, muscle growth and repair. It helps your hormones. So it's really, really essential, especially as we age, we kind of need it more. And I noticed this in other, especially in women, they tend to eat really low amount of protein, especially in the morning, because we've been told that in the morning we have to have oatmeal with raisins and banana and maple syrup or pancakes or stuff like that. And many women come to me and they're surprised when I tell them that they should eat eggs and cheese and yogurt in the morning. It takes a mindset reframe. So I usually encourage my clients to focus on every meal and try to have at least 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. Also, when they build their snacks, if they're snacking, also try to have 10 or 15 grams of protein there. So a roughly estimate would be maybe 1 gram per pound of body weight. But it really depends if you're active, if you're sedentary. It depends also because that's the thing with protein. Here comes the but, the great things about it because I think it's becoming more of a trend, like you said. And the thing with trends is that people tend to overdo it and to go overboard with it. So I also see online a lot of influencers like going 180 grams of protein per day, or which I think is kind of too much because your body also needs to digest it, and you need to have ample stomach acids to digest protein. So, for example, if you have H. pylori, if you have low thyroid, if you've been having acid reflux and you've been given antacids for a long period of time, chances are you're not going to be able to digest that much amount of protein. So you have to gradually increase it and also like check in with your body. And if you cannot digest it properly and you don't feel good about after eating it, then you should dig deeper and see what's going on and try to go to the root cause.
Mm.
So yeah, it depends.
And I want to sort of dispel maybe some of the myths around protein because I think there's a lot of companies now that are advertising you can get protein bars and protein balls and protein muesli slices and everything's like, oh, this has got 4 grams of protein in it. It's like, yeah, but it's also got 20 grams of sugar and a whole lot of
Yeah.
additives and preservatives that are in there too. So if someone's listening in and they're like, yeah, I want to, start to bump up my protein, do I really need to have these sort of protein bars and protein drinks, or can I just get it from my Whole Foods?
I think you can get it mostly from your health, from your whole foods. And it's also important. So it's not just the quantity, but it's also the quality. So I would aim for pasture raised eggs from wild caught fish, grass fed meat, um, quality dairy and cheese and everything. So those would be my main go-to sources. Of course, you can mix in plant sources like beans and legumes and lentils and everything. You could add, I'm not against like having a protein powder or having collagen powder, but I wouldn't go to these ultra processed alternatives like protein bars or because those usually have soy protein, it's highly processed, it's probably full of pesticides and usually it's not organic, so that's not good either. Um, yeah, so I think you could, and it can even be something like adding more seeds and nuts to your salad, like we talk about fiber, because they also have some protein. You can also find some protein in some vegetables, and so it's not just animal produce. But I would start there. I would start with whole foods, and if indeed you cannot get to that number that you need, then try to look at adding some protein powder or collagen, but I wouldn't go to the ultra processed alternative because, like you said, they're full of sugar, they're ultra processed, not a good option.
And sometimes they don't really have that much protein in them. They're just using
Yeah,
it from like an advertising sort of point of view, like, hey, if you're looking for protein, this has protein in it. So we'll try and sort of sucker you in almost to buy
yeah,
it. But essentially, a hard-boiled egg would have more protein in it than, one of the average sort of protein balls or whatever that you get.
yeah, exactly. And I think label reading is a whole new topic, a whole different topic that I approach with my clients because I always tell them like not to look on the front of the product, but look on the back because on the front it's just a marketing and you're gonna see gluten free, organic, high protein, high fiber, but it doesn't mean anything. Because yeah, like you said, it can be high protein, have like 4 grams, but also have 50 grams of sugar and carbs, and that's not good. So I always tell them to look at the ingredients, to look at the nutrition facts, and really see if that product is really good or not
Mm.
for
I
their
love
health.
that. And I agree with that too. And I always say to like my clients that, we are living in sort of a very busy, day and age, and not always can you cook from scratch or, make everything, which is fine. But if you are going to buy something that's pre-made, definitely turn it over, look at the ingredient list, try to look at where sugar is on the list of ingredients too to sort of work out if
Yeah.
it's in the first couple of ingredients, then it's definitely going to be high in sugar, and try and make that sort of more informed decision because it's not always sort of the best option.
Exactly. And try to stick to like ingredients that you know that you can pronounce, that you've heard of, and really choose products that have minimal ingredients, like 3 to 5 ingredients. That would be ideal. If you see a list of 20 ingredients, I would put it back on the shelf.
Mm. And I know the other sort of thing that I think is kind of having a spotlight at the minute is electrolytes. So, for someone that's
Okay.
listening in that might not know what electrolytes are, can you sort of give a little bit of information about electrolytes and how you might use them with someone that you're working with?
Yeah, so like with protein, it's having its moment, and I think it's a good thing, but also we tend to overdo it without regarding like if that person is active, if they're sweating a lot, if they're having a lot of movement throughout their day. So with electrolytes and minerals, I think it's very important to try to go as natural as possible. So for example, a great source of electrolytes that I use, for example, with my daughter when she had a bug issue and she needed to be really well hydrated. It's coconut water with some lemon in it and a pinch of salt, and that's it. You don't need to buy all the ready-made powders and use them consistently. In the morning, for example, my first cup of water is with lemon and a pinch of salt, and that's a great hydration boost, and it has minerals and everything. So yeah, I think I would go with, and you can make your own Gatorade with like some honey and coconut water and lemon and add some different fruit in it, and there you go. You have it. So I think it's important because we're also it comes in a discussion about the quality of water and how water doesn't have so many minerals anymore, and like we kind of need to, in order to hydrate well, we also need to have a water that's well mineralized, not just plain water. So I think it's important and they have their place, but I wouldn't overdo it. I wouldn't take like on a day-to-day basis, just take a powder of electrolytes.
Mm. And I know, the culture here in Australia, a lot of, women as they hit sort of perimenopause and menopause, and we've had conversations in the studio, they say to me, they don't drink a lot of water, but they drink a lot of coffee and tea. So, what suggestions do you have for those people? Should they be adding in some of the sort of coconut water or focusing on switching it up and alternating between maybe a tea and a coconut water or just plain water?
hmm I think they could definitely alternate. They could switch it up. They can have mineral water if that's more appealing to them. They can add lemon to it, or they can add herbs. For example, in the summer, like adding some leaves of mint or parsley with lemon, and it really gives it a good taste. Adding fruit to water, if that helps with water intake. You also get water from soup, from tea, from fruit and veggies, but it's usually not enough. And also coffee dehydrates you. So if you drink a lot of coffee, you definitely need to increase your water intake.
Yeah, agree. And we sort of just touched on the thyroid earlier in our conversation, but I wanted to bring that up because I know it can be, thyroid problems can be a really big issue for women, especially. So, can you share some info about sort of why it's important to really support our thyroid and what women can do to support it?
Yeah. So that's like a personal story for me because I one of the wake up calls that I have throughout my health history was hypothyroid after giving birth and sort of in my postpartum period. And I went to the doctor. They told me that we should check it in 6 months and see how it goes. And I wasn't given an action plan. I think I was told to eat low fat dairy. That was the nutrition advice for some reason. So yeah, when I started digging deeper, I realized that many of my symptoms were related to it. So you're gonna see things like being cold all the time, starting to gain weight for no apparent reason without changing anything in your diet or your lifestyle, losing hair. It's a lot of those really unpleasant symptoms, especially for a woman. So because thyroid is really foundational for your metabolic health, and it doesn't just it supports your energy, it supports your temperature regulation, it supports a lot of things. So I think it's important to, I always like when I have clients that come in that are really fatigued and really low energy, I always tell them to check thyroid. And when I say check your thyroid, it's not just TSH and free T4, which usually is what is recommended. It's also free T3, reverse T3, antibodies, because you can have antibodies long before your thyroid shows any symptoms. And that could be a great starting point. If you see that you have antibodies, it means that you have some inflammation in your body. You probably have some gut issues that you should take care of. And that would probably avoid some more serious thyroid issues later in the picture. And I would start them first with blood sugar management. That's a big one. I would look at the gut because most times there's a gut issue in there, especially if it's autoimmune thyroid. I would also kind of separate if you have autoimmune Hashimoto's or if you have like just low thyroid, because when it's autoimmune, it's mostly an immune system issue. So especially then I would look at the gut, because 70% of our immune system is in the gut. Also, I would start them with some movement, but I wouldn't overdo it. So it would probably be stuff like Pilates, like yoga, like strength training, walking could be great. Um, just going out into the sun and like getting that light first thing in the morning, it's great. Optimizing sleep. Without quality sleep, it's really, really hard to regulate your thyroid. So I would say 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and having like a really good sleep hygiene and sleep routine. So I think that would be the starting point. I always start with my clients. I have three, I call them non-negotiables. It's sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. So without these three, it's really hard to, it's like building on quicksand. If you don't have these in place and functioning optimally, it's really hard to build on top of it. So going to the fancy supplement protocol or doing all the biohacking stuff, they have their place, but after you take care of the foundation.
Mm. It's really those basics, isn't it? Like you said, if you're not,
Yeah.
if you're not focusing on your sleep and your nutrition and your movement, but then you're spending $200 on supplements, it's probably not really going to make a difference.
Yes. And I get it. It's much easier to spend that money and take a pill. It's much harder to be consistent and to eat right and to move your body and to prioritize sleep. And it's the simple things, but they're not easy to implement, of course. But that's where the magic happens.
Mm.
That's when you start seeing change.
All the boring, healthy habits that you can,
Yeah.
if you can do them consistently, then they really give you really good results, but they're not very sexy and no one wants to hear about them essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And I tried it. I mean, I tried all the hacks and all the supplements and everything. And until I got to actually sleeping, actually managing my stress and building resilience, and the diet part for me has always been easy. So once I found what worked for me, I can stick to it, and it wasn't a problem. But I struggled with sleep, with movement, with managing stress. And until I got those covered, I didn't see much change
Mm.
despite all the supplements and everything.
Yeah. And we've sort of circled back a couple of times and then we've sort of come back to the gut each time when we've, branched off to a different area. So if somebody was listening in and they're like, yep, I really want to make a change to my gut health because maybe they are experiencing some symptoms. Maybe it's like we talked about, maybe it's some constipation or low energy or bloating or that kind of stuff. Where would you say maybe just three things that they should focus on just to start to make a change in their gut health?
Well, the first thing that I do with my clients is I have them do a food mood poop journal. It's like a journal of everything that they eat and basically what goes in, what comes out, and not counting grams or calories or anything, just telling me the hours and like what they ate and their bowel movements, because that's when you really start to connect the dots and see maybe they have some food intolerances, maybe they realize that they're snacking all day, that they don't drink enough water, which is essential for gut health. So we start from there to really see the person and see what's happening for their case. I would say generally increasing fiber is essential, but it depends. Like there are some people that don't tolerate it well, and I wouldn't start necessarily with that. But long term, increasing your fiber is essential. Building your plate around protein, healthy fats, and fiber. Having all the colorful veggies and eating the rainbow, basically. So that would kind of be under the fiber thing. Starting to eat fermented food, but don't eat it as a side dish and really just one or two spoonfuls of kimchi or sauerkraut or kefir is also good. Water is important, so hydration is super important. And also reducing ultra processed foods, reducing sugar, some cases require a gluten and dairy elimination because I tend to, like when I work with my clients, I usually have them introduce the good stuff because then it's easier to crowd out the not so good stuff in their diet. But also, like, it's important to also eliminate those because unless you do so, they're still gonna impact your gut, and it's gonna take longer. It's gonna be harder to heal if you're still bombarding it with like gluten and dairy and sugar and everything. So that
And
would be probably a starting point.
yeah. And if somebody is looking at doing potentially like they go, okay, I'm going to eliminate dairy because we'll just see if that's sort of it. How
Mhm.
long would you suggest that they look at doing the elimination? Only I'm asking this question because, I've had people come to me and go, I cut it out for 2 days. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's not going to be enough, is it, to really see a difference?
Yeah, I usually do eliminations like for 3 weeks, around that 3, 4 weeks. It's also important because I see these extremes, like you said, eliminating for 2 days and then they're like, okay, nothing's changed. Of course, nothing's changed because it takes a while. But also I see people that have eliminated a lot of their food groups for months or years, and they're like, okay, I'm eating 3 foods and that's it. That's all my body can tolerate. So, because usually when you have a lot of intolerances to food, it's not a food issue, it's a gut issue. So you should heal your gut, not necessarily eliminate everything, because that's in the long term, it's gonna do more harm than good. So I would aim for 3 weeks or so, and then start to slowly reintroduce it and see how your body reacts, and if you see any reactions to it.
And I think this is also a good sort of time to sort of point out that if you're working with a professional and you can get the support from someone as well, they will be able to give you really good guidance when you're going through this. Because I know a lot of people, as you said, they will eliminate not just one, but say, gluten, dairy, everything at once. And then it's hard to work out exactly what was really causing the inflammation. So having some
Yeah,
support can really help. And as you said, give you some ideas too, that if you are trying to still build your plate and have that sort of balance of your protein, your complex carbs, your good fats, that, if you're someone that usually your go-to is, bread or pasta and you're trying to eliminate gluten, they can at least give you some other sort of suggestions about what to swap in.
yeah, exactly. Because I think like also with eliminating stuff and also adding too much, if you do it all at once, you're not gonna know what move the needle. Or if you get symptoms, you're not gonna know where they came from. So even like with introducing supplements, I don't introduce them all at once because I need to see that you're tolerating them. I need to see with changes, even if we're taking out or adding in, to see what happens with every change. So yeah, I would start slow.
Yeah. And with everything that we've sort of covered today, is there anything else that maybe we haven't covered that you really think we should highlight around this sort of women's health, sort of gut health topic?
Yeah. Well, we talked about protein and fiber. I wanted to also mention fat because there's been a lot of fat fearing for years, especially for women, and we've been told that we should eat everything low fat and avoid fat at all costs. But fat doesn't make you fat. It's sugar and processed carbs that do. So, and actually, fat is essential. It's essential for our brain. It's essential for our hormones. Like our sex hormones are made out of cholesterol. So we do need fat in our diet. So of course, there's a whole discussion about quality and what types of fat, but don't avoid it. I mean, eat your avocados, have your coconut oil, olive oil, olives. Healthy fats from animal protein are also good. Butter is good. So again, it depends on the person. Some people don't tolerate fat well, and then you have to dig deeper and see why this is happening. But as a general rule, fat is good.
Mm. Well, I
So
agree.
I
And I
wouldn't avoid it.
always, say to my listeners that again, we are focusing on those really good fats. You give lots of different examples that we often talk about. Nuts and seeds, another sort of good source that you can get your fat. Avocado
Yeah.
oil is another good one, ghee. So there's lots of good options. And then if you can try to steer clear of some of the inflammatory seed oils, then that is ideal as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, before we finish off, I always love to ask my guests when they come on the show that if you could give just one piece of advice to our listeners that after listening to this podcast, they could go off and just instigate straight away, what would it be?
I would tell them to just start, not wait for Monday or for the new year or new month or to go grocery shopping and have like a big overhaul of their kitchen and their pantry. Just start today and look at your next meal and think, okay, how can I make it more nutritious? What can I add or what can I take off the plate? And start there. It's not going to be perfect. Health journeys are not linear, are not perfect. Usually don't go straight from A to B and it's going to be a winding road. And it doesn't mean that if you start now, you're going to have it all figured out and you're going to eat clean and perfectly for the rest of your life. You're going to have ups and downs, but just start and see how your body feels. So it can be something as simple as and choosing one thing, like not trying to from tomorrow, you go for a morning walk, you have water before coffee, you start eating good 30 grams of protein for breakfast and everything. Just start with something small. In terms of nutrition, I would focus on blood sugar balance, which many people struggle much more than we would imagine. And the first thing that I would change would be breakfast. So if there's one thing that you could start changing tomorrow, that would be breakfast. I don't recommend skipping breakfast, especially for women in their fertile years, because it messes up with your hormones a lot. So build your breakfast plate around protein and healthy fats, and that's gonna change your entire day
Mm.
in terms of energy, mood, what and how you eat later on in the day.
Well, I love that. And I love too that you mentioned sort of perfection because I don't think there is, do you know what I mean? There isn't a perfect diet or a perfect, sleep pattern or because as you said before, we're all so individual and different. So it's trying to adapt it
Yeah.
to find what suits our body. And as you were sort of saying before, if you do that sort of journal where you record, what you eat, how you feel, and then what your bowel movement is, that's giving you a whole lot of information of whether or not, you're eating to really fuel your body and you're supporting it really well, or, maybe those food choices aren't supporting it really well. And your body will communicate pretty quickly to you what's happening.
Yeah. And it's also like there's no such thing as the perfect diet or the perfect sleep routine or the perfect, but it's also like for you throughout your life, you're gonna have go through different stages and like right now maybe you're not tolerating eggs. It doesn't mean that in a year from now you're not gonna tolerate eggs. Or right now you need 10 hours of sleep per night. Maybe later on when you're out of burnout, you're going to be okay with 7 hours or with 8 hours. So things change and things evolve, and we have to listen to our body, like we said, and move with it.
Mm. Well, I'm the perfect example of that because during my second pregnancy, I didn't tolerate eggs. I wasn't sure what it was, and I had some testing done, and it turned out that yes, I had had some like a suppressed, allergy to eggs, and then the pregnancy with my immune system changing with the pregnancy, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't tolerate eggs, and I really couldn't tolerate eggs for many years. My youngest is now 9, and it's probably only been in the last year or so that I've added them
Well,
back in, and I'm pretty good with them now. So, again, small doses, don't overdose, but just shows you how your immune system does change as you age. And sometimes we've got to make allowances for that. And our diet, along with our movement, and that will change as we age. And that's okay too. We've kind of just got to embrace the different stages and try to embrace the change when we can as well.
yeah, exactly. And especially for us as women, we go through a lot of changes, like with pregnancy, with perimenopause, with menopause. So we have to ride the wave.
Yeah, unfortunately, but if maybe it makes us the strongest sex, who knows?
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Where can
Thank you for having
listeners
me.
reach out and connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram and Substack. My Instagram is at back_to_wholesome. So my practice is back to wholesome. On Substack, it's at Karina Baloleanu, so my first and last name, which is probably harder to pronounce for non-European people. And also, like, you can learn more about how you can work with me and everything on my website, backtowholesome.com.
Amazing. Well, I'll link those up in the show notes too. So, listeners, you can head across to the
Thank you.
show notes and the link will be there. But I do also recommend that if you don't know much about Substack, then, definitely jump on there and follow Karina on there because she shares really in-depth articles. Whereas, on other social media platforms, it's kind of just a lot of sort of bite-sized bits. Substack's a little bit different. You get a lot of amazing writers, scientists, health experts, experts in all fields, and they generously share a lot of information. And it's also a really nice way that you can support these people as well. So, yeah, I'll put a link to Substack in the show notes as well. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me, Kate. It was really fun talking to you today.